Hey there friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again, and today I want to go over the Final Shape Abilities Tuning Preview Bungie dropped today for Destiny 2, and I'm really excited about this. It feels like with the new supers, new prismatic subclass, we've got new exotic class items, and all these ability changes, the game is going to be fresher than it's felt in a very long time once the Final Shape does drop, and I think that is very exciting, especially if you look to make different builds, adjust your combinations, use things you haven't touched in a very long time, which I like to do. All very good news in my personal opinion. And let's start with one of these subclasses that I feel like has needed love for a very long time in Stasis. This one is getting a bit of an overhaul with the Stasis Shard Overshield being replaced by Frost Armor, which is a stacking buff that reduces incoming damage. Essentially, if you grab Stasis Shards, you will get an escalating buff up to 5 stacks at base and then up to 8 stacks at maximum with different fragments in order to be extra tanky, and I think that is going to be something that I think you can really lean into for great effect, especially if it's as tanky as I hope it is ultimately. We also got some changes to different fragments as well as some aspects and also exotics. So like Renewal Grass and Ballador's Wrathweavers will be affected by this change to Frost Armor as well. We also got Whisper of Chill, which got changed. Just lots of updates to the way Stasis is going to interact with things with the new Frost Armor. And I think that is something that's long overdue, like I mentioned. I do hope Stasis is really, really good. They buffed the Hunter and Titan more so than the Warlock. The Warlock was already in a great place, especially if you use something like Bleak Watcher. And I do hope that with these changes, Hunter and Titan in PvE will be extremely useful. We don't have any idea what the artifact perks are going to look like, but hopefully we get a little Stasis love in there as well, so that way we can lean into this. Also keep in mind, as I'm going through a lot of these changes, this potentially could affect Prismatic as well, because any changes to the base, like for example, Diamond Lance got a buff. Diamond Lance is also available in Prismatic, so that will also get the same buff because it will work across the Stasis subclass as well as Prismatic, which I think is really exciting. And as someone who really likes to use the Diamond Lances, I think I'm going to have some insane builds ready once the Final Shape drops, and that's awesome for me personally. But again, a lot of these changes are just straight up buffs. I'm going to link the article in the description if you want to read through all of it. But I think Stasis is the biggest winner from this article that I can see. Now, as far as the biggest losers, that is likely going to be Well of Radiance as well as Banner of War Strand Titan. Plus, I'm not really entirely sold on Ward of Dawn. Now, as far as Well of Radiance, they've adjusted it so it's less healing and survivability, more damage output. So you reduced the player survivability, so healing per second is 100 down to 50, which I think is massive. It will be much more difficult to out-heal boss damage and just sit in a well. Increase heal on cast from 40 to 300, so you can use it while you're low to really survive in certain situations, more of a defensive usage, and then reduce damage resistance versus non-boss and bosses, and then increase maximum number of orbs for defeating targets while in your well. So overall, I think this is a positive change for the health of the game, as well was too dominant for too long in endgame activities especially, and hopefully we have things to try out. I'm not as sold on the changes to Ward of Dawn, so they removed Armor of Light and said now you immediately get a full Void Overshield. Not a big fan of that change. Armor of Light now instead grants additional damage resist to players inside the ward. That's fine. I think that could be alright, especially if you're using it in like a melee battle. Allies near Ward of Dawn now get an Overshield trickled over time, which is similar to the volume behind a Bastion Barricade, which is fine. And then it no longer provides weapons of light. This has been moved to the Helm of Saint 14. I would love to be a Helm of Saint 14 main, to be honest, but I just don't know if that's enough to make it viable, especially because in PvE, I don't think Ward of Dawn was all that useful previously. I was hoping that it would still be an option, but I just don't know if that would be the case. It still might be pretty good in PvP, but I'm explaining why that's not going to be as good in a little bit as well. The Ward of Dawn caster now can generate additional orbs of power by defeating enemies with melee attacks in or near the Ward of Dawn dome. So Potentially, depending on how many you can generate, if you pop it as like a ad clear type of situation where you're getting rushed by a bunch of thrall, for example, and you just melee all of them and just continuously generate orbs, maybe that could be a viable option. I just don't see it, especially when we're looking at end game type of stuff. They're also going to be adjusting the super cooldowns in PvP, so it does seem like you're not going to get much of a benefit from running these over some different supers in the game currently. So those changes combined will probably see a significantly drop in usage for Ward of Dawn as well as the Well of Radiance, which I think is, again, long overdue. I don't mind that whatsoever. Now, we did get some buffs to the Arc subclass as well, not only with the Hunter, but also the Warlock and the Titan. The Titan Thunderclap could be interesting. I don't know if it's going to be enough, really. They also reworked some things with Knockout. As far as the Warlock, all pretty much the melee abilities. We've got Lightning Surge buff, Ball Lightning, Chain Lightning, etc. Same thing with the Hunter. The Arc Staff got heavy Palm Strike attacks and heavy Ant Slam blind enemies, which I don't know how effective that is ultimately, but overall, these are good quality of life changes. I do think Arc needed a little bit more to be more exciting and be viable. But again, if we get really crazy Arc perks next season on the artifact, then that'll replace whatever buffs we don't get with this. They also buffed the arc grenades, like the Storm Grenade, Skip Grenade, and Arc Bolt, which kind of terrifies me in certain aspects, but these are only increased damage versus PvE combatants, so not PvP, which would have been something of a nightmare. Now, Arc Fragments also got adjusted. Then moving on, we've got solar changes. So Hunter, they buffed the lightweight knife, which is cool. Knock 'em down got adjusted. Golden Gun, Marksman. So they reduced the strength of Orbs of Power, so you can't just chain Golden Gun if you have 6 of them on your team and just kind of pop them. Which, again, I think is fine. It was a niche usage, but I understand why they felt like that might have been broken. Especially it might affect one of the bosses in this next raid. So that makes a lot of sense. Titan Consecration Slam now can shatter Stasis Crystals. Ignitions generated by Consecration now do 20% additional PV damage and fix an issue where Consecration's intended PV damage resistance was not being applied. Again, I think it's the one that I probably won't use a ton in PvE, but it's nice to be somewhat viable, especially when you want to use Pyrogale for that heavy damage. Another Sunbreaker ability featured on Prismatic is a Hammer of Soul. Hammer of Soul increased projectile submunition count when Soul Invictus is not equipped. So, again, nice changes overall. And then Swarm Grenade finally, Swarm Grenade, increased tracking shape, increased linger duration, increased damage versus PvE combatants. All of those that I just mentioned as well are also available on Prismatic, which I think is a great thing. Hunter, they buffed the Snare Bomb, Trapper's Ambush, Stylus Executioner. Stylus Executioner weaken effect can now be applied by glaive melee attacks, which hopefully we get glaive buffs because I want glaives to be good and they just haven't been for so long. Titan, increased maximum bounce to the shield throw from 4 to 5, increased maximum lifetime. Big shield throw updates, which I think is great. I already love it and I already like running some of the exotics that run with it, so I think that could be really, really cool. Give me that Captain America shield throw all the time, which is awesome. And then Warlock, Chaos Accelerant, Charged Magnetic Grenade, increased maximum intensity and damage. Lots of changes. In Pocket Singularity is buffed, Nova Bomb, and then Vortex is also buffed. So lots of good changes. I think all good things for sure. So, Strand got a bit of a nerf in general. First off, with the threat of warning, reduced Woven Mail duration from 10 to 5 seconds. Big bummer there, but I think it's absolutely necessary with how strong it was. Hunter, Ensnaring Slam, detonation volume versus enemy players, now a cylinder rather than a sphere. Threaded Spike is a little too potent, reduce that as well. Warlock, Weaver's Call, defeating an enemy strain damage now has a chance to generate Perch Threadling, higher chance of generation from defeating more powerful targets. So, this is not bad. I think this is a good change, but I don't know how great it actually is. Hopefully that's enough to really generate more Threadlings, make it viable. Grapple Tangles no longer fully refresh duration. When Grapple 2, that's going to change some people's way of playing for sure. Titan, reduced melee energy generation for Into the Fray. And then Banner of War, reduced maximum timer, melee, glaive, melee, and super damage bonus now has been diminished with Syntheseps. Melee and glaive melee damage bonuses have been diminished with Wormgod as well. Just all nerfs there. And I'm not surprised. Banner of War has been insane and just way too powerful for far too long. Frenzy Blade, we identified an issue where the melee lunge target point was being offset too far forward with the actual lunge target, resulting in some odd behavior. Yes, that happened all the time, and I hated it. Anyway, so tomorrow we are getting another one of these previews that is going to focus on exotic armors, which I think is really good. They said this one, the two combined was going to be a total of 9,000 words, which is kind of insane. But ultimately, I think these are mostly good changes that I am looking forward to trying out myself and hopefully seeing how much this shakes up the meta. I do feel like not only with everything that I mentioned, but also just the types of new enemies that we're facing, it could be a great time in Destiny 2 to really mix things up, try something new, see how you like all of the different abilities and everything, see how you like combining new supers, new exotics, all that kind of good stuff. Really excited about all that. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more Destiny 2 content from me going forward. I'm really hyping up the final shape. I hope it delivers. If the Into the Light update is any preview, it absolutely will. We got a great cutscene yesterday. We got a bunch of awesome new content from Pantheon to Horde mode, Onslaught, and all that kind of good stuff. Really looking forward to that. Can't wait for the final shape. My name is JoPa. Have a good one. I'll catch you all later.